for its gardens never withered, no matter the season. Eliza found peace among the flowers, living alone in a small cottage near the estate. Her world was silent, not by choice but by fate. She had lost her hearing at the age of 12. But in the silence, she discovered a deeper connection with nature. Every fluttering leaf, every petal in bloom, spoke to her in ways words never could. One crisp spring morning, as the first tulips shyly peeked through the soil, a stranger arrived at the estate. His name was Adrian Blake, a historian from London sent to research the Ashford lineage. With tousled dark hair and curious eyes, Adrian was drawn not only to the estate's secrets but also to the quiet girl who moved like poetry through the gardens. Their first encounter was brief, a nod, a gentle smile. But it was enough to leave an impression. Adrian soon learned of Eliza's world of silence and, determined to bridge the gap, began leaving her handwritten notes tucked inside flower pots and garden benches. Do the roses always bloom this early here? What's your favorite flower? Would you like some tea one day? Each note was answered with a small sketch from Eliza, blushing roses, a teacup with steam rising like clouds, a shy sun peeking over the estate roof. Their unspoken conversation became a language of its own. Over the weeks, their bond deepened. Adrian spent his days researching in the library and his evenings wandering the gardens beside Eliza. He learned to communicate through gestures and expressions, and she taught him to slow down and listen with his heart. One dusky evening, under a blooming wisteria arch, Adrian took Eliza's hands in his. I may not know how to sign everything yet, he wrote in his notebook, but I know how to love you. Every day, more than the last. Tears shimmered in Eliza's eyes as she traced the word yes on his palm with a trembling finger. Years passed, and the Ashford estate was restored with love and laughter. Adrian and Eliza married beneath the same wisteria arch where their hearts had first spoken. Together, they opened the estate to the public, turning it into a sanctuary for art, music, and nature, a place where silence was never lonely and every flower carried a promise. In the heart of the garden, a plaque read, "Where words failed, love bloomed." And so, in the garden of silent promises, their story lived on, quiet, eternal, and full of wonder. When the stars returned. In a quiet seaside town named Avonshore, where the waves whispered to the cliffs and the stars painted the sky like poetry, lived a girl named Alara. She was a painter who spent her days capturing the ocean's moods on canvas and her nights watching the stars from her attic window. Alara believed that everything in the universe had its own rhythm, and she was just waiting for hers to align with someone else's. One summer evening, a stranger arrived in town. His name was Cashin. He was a writer, traveling the coast in search of inspiration after a heartbreak he never spoke of. He moved into the cottage next to Alara's, unaware that his arrival would change the course of both their lives. Their first meeting was anything but romantic. Alara was sketching the old lighthouse when Cashin, distracted by his thoughts, stumbled into her easel and ruined the painting. Flustered apologies followed, but instead of anger, Alara simply laughed. It was the kind of laugh that carried the sea's freedom, full, clear, and forgiving. I guess fate has a clumsy way of introducing people, she said. Cashin offered to make it up to her with coffee at the local cafe. That coffee turned into a walk by the shore. One walk became many. They talked about books, the stars, the people they once loved, and the fears they didn't know how to name. Alara showed him how to see color in everything, and Cashin helped her find stories in her brushstrokes. As weeks passed, their bond deepened. But Alara, ever cautious, kept a secret. She had a heart condition, and the reason she painted so passionately was because she never knew how much time she had left. She had vowed not to fall in love. Cashin, too, was haunted by his past, a fiancé who left him when life grew too dark. But love has a quiet way of growing, not like thunder, but like a sunrise. One night, under a meteor shower, Cashin kissed her. It was slow, gentle, filled with the hesitations of two people who had been hurt too many times. Afterward, they sat wrapped in silence, starlight reflecting in their eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, he replied. But maybe we can be brave together. Elara slowly began to let him into her world, taking him to her favorite cliffs, showing him unfinished paintings, and finally, telling him about her heart. Instead of pulling away, Cashin held her hand and promised he'd stay for every heartbeat she gave. That autumn, he wrote a novel inspired by her. And in turn, she painted a canvas called When the Stars Returned, a depiction of the moment they first kissed beneath the meteor shower. Elara's health worsened that winter. There were hospital visits, days she couldn't paint, and nights when Cashin would read to her until she fell asleep. But love didn't waver. On the first day of spring, Cashin proposed with a ring he carved from driftwood and silver. She said yes with tears in her eyes. They never made it to a big wedding. Instead, they married on the shore, just the two of them, with waves as witnesses and gulls as their choir. Elara wore a simple dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers. A week later, she passed away in her sleep, painting still on her fingers, and a smile on her lips. Cashin stayed in Avonshore. He built an art gallery named after her, Elara's Light, filled with her paintings and his words. Every summer, people came from around the world to see the gallery, but Cashin always saved one night for himself, the night of the meteor shower. He would sit on the same cliff where they once kissed, whisper her name to the stars, and wait for them to return. And every year, they did. The light between the mountains. In a quiet valley nestled between two majestic mountains, there was a little village named Avelin. The people lived simply, farming, weaving, singing old songs passed down through generations. Among them lived a young woman named Elira, known for her gentle heart and bright smile. She lived alone in a small cottage near the edge of the forest, where the trees whispered stories to the wind. Elira spent her days tending to her garden and painting the world around her. Her paintings captured the soul of the valley, morning light breaking through the mist, deer grazing near the river, and children playing in fields of wildflowers. She loved her life, but often found herself gazing across the mountains, wondering what lay beyond. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced in the breeze, a stranger arrived in Avelin. His name was Kale, a traveling carpenter with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor. He had been searching for peace after years of wandering from town to town, building homes and bridges, never staying long enough to be remembered. Kale began helping the villagers repair roofs before the winter came. Elira watched him from afar, intrigued by the way he spoke to the children, how his hands moved with care and strength. They met one morning when her easel blew over and Kale caught it just in time. She thanked him with a shy smile, and he simply said, "Your painting is beautiful. It feels like home." From that day on, they began to share quiet moments. He would carve wooden frames for her canvases, and she would cook him warm meals after long days of work. They talked about everything, his travels, her dreams, the stars above the mountains. Slowly, gently, a bond grew between them. One snowy evening, as the village prepared for the winter festival, Kale asked Elira to walk with him to the old bridge that crossed the river. The world was silent beneath the snow, only the sound of their boots crunching softly. Under the pale glow of lanterns, Kale turned to her. "I've traveled far," he said, his voice steady, "but I've never felt more at home than here, with you." Elira's breath caught. She had never thought love would come to her this way, not with fireworks, but with quiet kindness and shared silences. "I used to dream of what lay beyond the mountains," she whispered, "but now I dream of building something here, with you." They stood there, fingers entwined, the snow falling like blessings around them. Spring came, and with it, blossoms and beginnings. Kale built them a house near the river, not far from the village. Elira painted its walls with scenes from their memories. They planted trees together, sang songs by the fire, and watched the stars from their rooftop. And though the mountains still stood tall and wide, Elira no longer looked beyond them with longing. For she had found her journey, her home, her love, right there in the valley, in the light between the mountains.